Youth Forum. We welcome everyone to the first edition of the SDG Conclave 2020, and we are conducting today's session on Goal 3. The primary focus will be on promoting healthcare and wellness. So let me tell you a bit about what Youth Forum is and what Alexis Foundation stands for. Youth Forum is a project under Alexis Society, and a team consists of inspired young students and professionals who are solely interested in creating a positive social impact by conducting research on policy issues, writing thought-provoking and insightful blogs, designing creative social media campaigns, organizing life-changing events, and interviewing leaders and change makers. As it is correctly said that youth are not only the leaders of tomorrow, but also the partners of today. So we are at Youth Forum, a team of creative and encouraging individuals who have a shared vision and a mission to change the world. So through this first SDG conclave, we wish to bring together the change makers and the leaders from all around the globe under the Act for SDG campaign week of the United Nations. It will help to prepare an actionable agenda that will aid all of us in achieving the sustainable development goals through all the initiatives and more. While the world leaders meet virtually at the United Nations General Assembly to take up trying issues and give a solution to these tough times, we are trying to do our small bit by taking action and raising awareness and initiating a better direction ahead. The turning point of the planet and people needs to be now. Now, let me have the honor of introducing the speaker for today, Ms. Chiyoko Osborne. A brief introduction of her begins. Chiyoko and her mission in her life is to raise consciousness and awareness about well-being, and she believes that every person has the right to do so. Chiyoko works as an executive coach who leads and helps founders from the corporate world and business world to enhance their performance through the flow state procedure that she has created. Now, she has been a part of many committees who can give their expert opinions on variety of topics. She is a partner at Evolution, coaching and consulting firm based in Los Angeles, serving clients worldwide. She co-founded MindFresh, a corporate wellness company that brings meditation and mindfulness into offices. She is a certified holistic health coach, and she sits on the Mount Sinai Adolescent Psychiatry Advisory Board. So now let me introduce the chair for today. We have with us Kunal Mandal, sir. He is the co-founder of GameSpace, a gamification company which uses quizzes and other games as a tool for personal growth and people's engagement, and sidebyseindia.com, a travel portal which helps travelers discover and book inspiring city experiences provided by local experts. Currently, he's on a mission to teach curiosity as a life skill, to increase awareness about sustainability, and to empower young Indians to be more than they thought they could be. So let's take this forward, this discussion forward, trying to arrive at solutions to the session on SDG goal number 3. I now would like to hand over the floor to Kunal, sir.
Thank you so much, Katayani, and hello and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you who is joining in and listening to today's session. I have a very, very special guest today, Chiyoko Osborne. Chiyoko, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. To the both of you and everybody else listening, it's truly an honor to be here with people who are passionate, dedicated, and I'm just excited to lend my voice to SDG number 3. So thank you.
Great to have you with us. Let's begin with my first question. And I was going through your profile, and it sounds fascinating to me that you were into marketing and e-commerce in the fashion industry at places like Calvin Klein and Alexander Wang. And then you also worked in ad agencies at like McCann Erickson and Havas Worldwide, and working on multiple global consumer brands. So how did you end up in wellness?
I love how you lead with such an easy, simple question. I enjoy that question deeply. Thank you so much. And how did I end up in wellness? I had a complete personal awakening at about 30 years old. It didn't happen in one day, but essentially the practice of yoga and the spirituality element of the practice of yoga, studying a bit of Hinduism and Buddhism just woke me up to a life that I was leading that I did not know at the time was keeping me very, very unsatisfied and lacking in purpose to contribute to society in a very productive way. And once I had that realization, I had to work quite tirelessly to make an entire career change and shift. But it's through the yoga practice that I found holistic health, and I understood what that was. I didn't even know what that was beforehand. I understood a healthy, well-rounded, holistic diet. I was familiar with exercise, as many people are, being good for you, but there was really an element of bringing together the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being that came for me at about 30, 31 years old, and I'm 40 years old today, so I'm just about a decade along this path of wellness.
Wow, that's fascinating to hear. That's like almost every one of us who have probably worked in the corporate and dealt with the stress, or even entrepreneurs of today who are always stumble with multiple issues. I think they can get inspiration from your journey for sure. And since you mentioned right now, I think 4 kinds of wellness, if I'm not wrong: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Can you help us understand these different wellnesses a little bit more, and like what are the differences between them and how each one of them impacts our life in what ways?
Absolutely. And it's not a concept that I can fully take credit for inventing myself. This is kind of my way of really sticking to what I call 4 pillars of health. And you mentioned them, Kunal. It is the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And as I started to, about 10 years ago, wrap my head around what holistic health meant, this really came to the surface as the most important fundamental thing for me to personally understand as an individual, and then to help other people understand what that is. And at the time, before I was aware of holistic wellness, I thought good health just meant diet and exercise. You eat your vegetables and you go for a jog, and that is, you're healthy. What else could there possibly be? And so my awareness has greatly expanded, my knowledge, expertise has expanded. And what I'd love to share is that while diet and exercise are really critical, important components, not to be overlooked, those are part of the foundation of your physical well-being, it is only one out of what I call 4 pillars. And I often say these 4 pillars are like 4 legs of a stool, right? They're all holding equal weight of holding us up. And if one pillar is broken, faulty, not well, the whole stool will come down. And I tremendously believe in that. I feel really passionately for people to understand that these 4 things need to be equally looked at. And there might be moments, days, weeks where one pillar is not as strong as the rest, and that's okay. What's important is we turn our attention to the pillar that is not doing as well, that could use some more attention, some more mindfulness. And so for physical health, the first one I mentioned, that really is diet and exercise. It is what I call our physical pod, this being that encases, I heard it beautifully put by a yoga teacher, our physical being is matter that encases spirit for a limited amount of time on this planet, right? Depending on your philosophy or spiritual beliefs. And I appreciate that, because our vehicle of how we show up, how our spirit, our soul shows up to do work, we need to have a healthy vehicle that we're showing up in. So diet and exercise. The next 2 pillars, which is the mental and emotional, they're very closely related, but there is a distinction between them. And I really like describing how they are a bit different so that people can make sure that they are being mindful to care to each one of those. So in the most simplistic way that I can describe, your mental health is really your cognitive thinking and ability to process. And are you doing that with a clear mind, right? Or is your mind cluttered with chatter, with stress, with distractions? Are you able to show up and make the best decisions possible mentally and cognitively? And the emotional state is, how do we process our feelings? How do we process emotion that comes up? How do we process stress, anxiety, fear, guilt, shame? These are all human emotions, and it's okay to have them. It's not turn those off and don't feel them. That'd actually be very unhealthy. But a healthy emotional state is to feel them, to recognize them, give yourself space, learn how you process them best, and then be resilient enough to carry on once the emotional processing is done. So there's a bit of a separation right there, but often, our mental thoughts for mental health, they create emotional stress. So these things are very closely tied together. And the final component, the 4th pillar that I will champion to the cows come home, is spiritual health. And everyone, I welcome and I actually support, and I love that there are so many different spiritual philosophies out there. There's different religions, different practices, different life philosophies and approaches. Whatever your lingo is, whatever your practice is, find it and figure out how to have rituals in your day-to-day life that connect you to a purpose and a power that is greater than you just as a single human being on this earth. And I think it's critically important for people to feel this connection to their purpose and to just a greater force, the life force. You know, you can call that the prana. You can call that the chi that surrounds everything, the earth, and mana is another word for the life force, life energy, and all these various spiritual practices and religions. I always say, whatever your flavor is, lean into it and find time, carve out time on a daily basis to connect to that, because that's some of the most important stuff in life that lends to our overall happiness and well-being. And so that's kind of the overarching 4 pillars of health right there.
Well, all the young people who are listening in, you right there had, a very quick refresher course on what holistic health looks like. And I noticed one of the things you said, which is, sort of the finding that purpose will essentially happen through if you channelize your energies in the right direction, right? And you, of course, mentioned some of the ways we can do it, but I want to dive deeper into it. And because tools are all great, right? And you mentioned that follow some rituals, which sort of unleashes that energy and helps you go forward in that direction. But, most of us can't function without a set framework. And I believe through your work, you have already created that. And I was reading, and what caught my attention was this thing called Mandala Method. And there, what you try to do is, what as I understood is, you help leaders access peak performance through flow state. And it's a personalized or personal optimization program based on neuroscience, biohacking, mindfulness, and meditation. Now, what I did not know is, what is flow state? And if you could tell us about what this Mandala method is, and whoever is listening, please pay attention to this one specifically, because this would be, you have the tool, now she's going to guide you through how to do it.
I appreciate that question. Thank you. So Mandala Method is a methodology that I created, and this is based upon 10 years in the holistic and mindfulness space and all the things that I've learned along the way. And I will say my journey has been wide and colorful over a decade in this holistic health area. That's because I feel so passionately about it, and I'm trying to bring it to fruition and reach people in as many ways as possible. So Mandala Method specifically is focused on flow state and peak performance. And as you mentioned, Kunal, the question is, what are those two things, right? People might be vaguely familiar with it, but I will share how I define flow state and peak performance. And then what are some guidelines of how you can start to achieve those things in your life? So I would say the most simplistic way to define flow state, it is the optimal brain-body balance that you can reach. So this is your physical body that we're in right now, our physical pod. And it's also our cognitive thinking. There's a lot going on with our neurology. So how do you get your neurology, your biology, and your chemistry all synced up in the most balanced place where you don't have distraction from making the best decisions possible or having the most creativity that you possibly can? So it's almost a bit easier to describe what's not flow state. And then that'll kind of define what is flow state. Flow state is not when we are feeling stress and anxiety on a chronic daily basis. So many people wake up and the first thing they do is they pick up their cell phone and they look at the notifications, they check emails. This is getting you into the fight or flight state of heightening the adrenaline and cortisol. So those are some of the biology things that are created in the body. Is we have heightened cortisol and we have heightened adrenaline. And this is when we're in the fight or flight. It's getting us in go mode. This is not the way to start off your day. So if you want to optimize for peak performance, what you should do is have a very mindfully crafted morning. And I can describe more what this might look like for some people. They could possibly try it at home. They're really easy rituals, but the idea is just to find what works for you. So chronic stress and anxiety, we want to eliminate those as much as possible so that we can enter flow state. And this is where it is said, and these are studies that are done by For example, McKinsey & Company is a large consulting group here in the United States. They did a 5-year study on executives, CEO level professionals, where they found if they can enter this flow state during their workday, they're actually 5 times more productive. So we're reducing stress and anxiety. We're increasing our ability to make best decisions and creativity. And we do this by understanding, and this is where the secret sauce is, we have to understand what gets our brain and body in the most optimized state possible. So morning rituals that include meditation, daily practices that include healthy eating, because we need to be fueling our body with the most productive nutrition that we possibly can. And then everyone should have some other rituals that really help them just get into a state of mind where, again, the distraction is put to the side. I always say, put thoughts about the past to one sideline, put thoughts about the future to the other sideline, and start to create a space where that middle playing field opens up. This is your game field. When you can be so present and in the moment with the distractions to both sides, you're starting to enter flow state. When you enter flow state, that's when you have peak performance. So that's how those two things are married together. And unless you really experience it, it's a little bit hard to fully grasp the concept. Many people can relate to, they were working on a project, maybe it's a school project or a work project, and they got in the zone. So that's typically how it's described. Some people are like, whoa, I don't even know where 2 hours went, but I did my entire paper and it's 10 pages long. It was actually incredibly good. Usually that would take me 3 days to write, but I was in the zone, and in 2 hours, I got done what would take like 3 days, 3 afternoons. So for people who feel like they don't have a system set up to figure out like, well, what's their flow state? How do they get there? How do they get to optimization and peak performance? Go back to, how did you get in the zone? And sometimes, it's because you're very motivated by a project, you're inspired, you're desiring to do it. I will say, oftentimes, whether you're a professional or a student, you're handed an assignment that you actually don't want to be doing. It's a drag, it's lame, it's stupid. You wish you didn't have to do it. I'm just being honest here, right? Not everything is exciting and riveting, but you have to get it done. Your boss has a deadline for you, and the paper's due on a certain day to your teacher. So you have to get it done. Go back to a time where you actually felt inspired, and maybe it's through a creative writing project or it's an art project, something that's not work related. How do you get yourself in the zone? And so once you reach that state, one of the things that I speak about often is that every single person has their own unique peak performance formula. What are the practices, the rituals, and the habits that set you up for success? There's a lot of things that across the board are good in general. I'll go back to meditation. In general, meditation is a useful, very, very powerful tool for everybody. There are so many different kinds of meditation out there. There's so many different kinds. And I believe the two of you are very familiar with this. And people watching this would be, people say, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to meditate. I can't meditate. I've tried so many times. I've tried the apps. I read a book. I went on a weekend retreat. I still can't do it. And I would say, stay steadfast to the cause of figuring out what your special formula is. What is your meditation practice? And I can speak about meditation separately, but that's just one example of how do you show up with meditation? How do you show up with diet and exercise? The 4 pillars or health is what sets you up to actually enter your flow state and peak performance. So I hope that rounds out that question, and let me know if you have any questions about that. I'm happy to elaborate.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, and I wish I had access to the flow state before I made questions for you. So, few of the things that you mentioned, stuck with me very deeply. One is I was fortunate enough to attend Burning Man last year, and it's an incredible experience. Everyone should have once in their lifetime, and I was fortunate to have it. And I met someone there who was very diligently explaining to me how each person and each soul has a different vibration. And now that, you are talking about you have to get into your tune to play things your way. And that sort of, resonates so much with me now. But the last part of the things that you said, that still remains one of the most commonly asked questions. And the restless generation of millennials, we want shortcuts for everything, right? And it's almost like, okay, I tried the meditation for a few days and it's not working. I went to the retreat, it didn't work, and things like that. So I honestly will put forward directly to you: is there a shortcut?
We all love shortcuts. And my answer to, is there a shortcut to learning meditation, getting in that groove and getting to your flow state? My answer is 2 parts. 1, there is no shortcut. But 2, there are ways to make it easier on yourself to do versus more difficult on yourself. And so if I were to offer any kind of list of shortcuts, and also I want to be mindful that there's a variety of different people at different stages in attempting meditation practice. For those of you who are seasoned meditators, you're doing your transcendental meditation or Vipassana, whatever it is, fantastic. These are for the folks who, as you said, Kunal, that is the most common thing that I hear. I've tried it so many times, but I can't meditate. I can't stop the thoughts from coming. It doesn't work for me. And so I just patiently, for about a decade now, I welcome that, because that's truly the person's experience. And I hold compassion for that. And I was there. I was that person sitting in the yoga class, just the 5 minutes after the yoga class, meditating at Jiva Mukta Yoga, sitting there, and I'm peeking around. Is everyone else just sitting here? Like, what's happening? I just couldn't get my mind to stop thinking. So some tips, right? Here's a few tips. If you're that person that's tried many times, what could you possibly do? I would say before you dive into what is classically meditation, which is complete silence in total stillness, usually seated upright, I would say try for 10 minutes of mindfulness. And in mindfulness, you will not be, so what's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? The goal of meditation is to enter a state of transcendence. This is when the brain falls from the beta hyperactive down to the alpha less active. Theta is the state before sleep. There is that theta state. When you enter that theta state, you have transcended the mind, the thinking mind. There is a gap where you don't know that time has passed. It is quite complex for people to get to that gap. Once you do and you taste that, that will be the biggest motivator to keep on your meditation practice. Mindfulness is having awareness of the present moment and all things that surround you in your environment. So you're not in theta state for mindfulness. So what my recommendation is, mindfulness practices will help pave the path to make your meditation practice a little bit easier. So just sit in 10 minutes of silence, right? You might not have complete theta state transcendence, but moments of silence, meaning outside distractions, are calmed down. And I would find the most relaxing, soothing meditation music. YouTube is great for this. You'll find the one that fits you. No lyrics, but just a very ambient noise. I would actually use music to help you get into a mindful, relaxed state before you jump into a full-on meditation practice. And then I would say once you're ready for perhaps just 10 minutes of maybe music or just a comfortable seated space, do not stress. Do not make it harder than it has to be. Relax all expectations of meditation. And then I would say the next step is recorded guided meditations. And I'll mention Deepak Chopra because it's on my radar that there is an app that was released, I think just a few days ago or a few weeks ago. And Deepak Chopra, if you're familiar with his name, he is one of the largest names and brands in the mindfulness and meditation space. I don't know him personally. I've read many of his books over the years. I've been to a few lectures, and I'm not endorsing this app because I have any connection to it, but there are a few people out there in the space that are offering guided meditations. And I just know one that I've personally had a great experience with many years ago when I was starting. I give it to a lot of my clients to get to that next stage before they sit in total silence. Deepak Chopra has a lot of 21-day meditation challenge series. So it's 21 days. They're about 15 to 20 minutes each. And Deepak is guiding, and it's usually inspired by some sort of theme. If Deepak is not your taste and you would rather listen to somebody else, find some other guided meditation to help you get started. And then the goal, once you're ready, is to actually sit in just 5 minutes of complete silence. And I recommend a mantra. And a mantra can be given to you by a teacher. Many people, the transcendental meditation lineage has trained teachers who give you a secret mantra that you don't share with anybody else. It could be that spiritually profound, or it could be something you find on the internet. It can be Sanskrit or English. And the mantra that I will share with everybody right now is one of my favorite ones in English. It is the phrase or the 2 words, let go. So with every inhale, you silently say to yourself, let, and every exhale, you silently say to yourself, go. So inhale, let, exhale, go. Silently in your own mind, just repeat that with every breath in, every breath out, 5 minutes. When you're ready for that, and you can do that for a good week. Don't rush the process. Then it becomes 10 minutes a week later. So I don't know if these would qualify as shortcuts because as I say, everyone has to do their own heavy lifting. It requires discipline, it requires commitment, and it requires a sincere desire to see change in your life from a positive standpoint, that you know that it takes time. Change takes time. Anything meaningful requires a little bit of work that goes into it. I appreciate the question, but I think a lot of times, especially in America, I'm American, I will speak on behalf of Americans, this is very dicey now. We live, or I experience personally, living in a society where everything is so instantaneous gratification. I can pull up my phone and get food delivered in 30 minutes. I can get a car to my front door in 4 minutes. Everything is right now. The way that startups go, the business world, the apps, the connectivity, it is so fast paced that I think we have become a little disconnected from things that take time and patience and discipline to stay the course for. So I'm not anti-shortcut, but I hope that's helpful to encourage people to stay the path, because it comes. It'll totally come.
No, I totally agree. And everyone, please listen in. And this is the last time I'm going to say it. There are no shortcuts, but she has given you some steps that you can try out. And she has even given you a mantra, which can help you, attain that state of flow that you are looking for. And, this was what you said in the last is exactly what my next question was going to be, that, we live in a world of instantaneous, instant gratification and instant result and instant everything. I mean, everything is like 2-minute noodles for us, right? Why is this not happening, right? So in that scenario, one of the things that I notice is, we sort of, let me collect my thoughts. What gets sort of measured gets managed, right? Only when you can measure the impact of something, then we will say that, all right, I think this is working for me, and I will probably go with this. But when it comes to meditation, I have often heard people say, and there are many other things as well, but that includes meditation, that, I tried this for so long, and I actually did everything that you said or you told me to do, but still I'm not seeing the result. So my question to you would be that, have you been able to measure wellness? And if there are some best practices that you know of or anything that you have seen, please share with us.
Absolutely. And I am a person who likes stats and data and measuring and results. As we mentioned, I came from a 10-year career in the corporate world. So I also call myself a recovering type A personality, right? I like everything neat, organized, budgets, timelines. And I've had to unwind a little bit of that with my mindfulness and meditation, a bit more self-awareness. But I love that question. How can we measure what the results are of the input? Because if there's a lot of input on our end and the output is very small and we're feeling like, is this worth our time? That's what it comes down to. Is what you're putting in worth what you're getting out? And if the answer is no, well, then we better readjust something. So a tool that I've used for myself that I recommend to my clients, especially those trying to figure out why hasn't this been working for years, it's a tool that's the goal of the tool is to have what I would call a very simple and practical level of self-awareness and honesty with yourself. No one else needs to see what I'll call your meditation journal. You can do it on your phone, an app. You can get just a single piece of paper. You can get a little notebook. Don't be fancy. Don't be complicated. Every single day, write down that day's date if you meditated for 5 minutes or for 20 minutes twice a day. That's, in general, I find people have the most success with 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the late afternoon, early evening before dinner. If you can sit in meditation space, that's usually the sweet spot. And I think that's actually been scientifically studied. It's the transcendental meditation. It's a lot of science behind their methodology. I'm not connected with their association. I have done the training myself as a participant, and I appreciate it. So this, I would say, if you're struggling, write down for a 2-week period, 14 days, every single day, how often you're actually doing the practice. What I found with most people, which is not the case for everybody, but many, they're not doing it nearly as much as they think they are. And they think, I've tried this. I'm trying every single day. And sure enough, they tried Sunday, they tried Monday, something came up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they tried again Friday. And they're like, I did it every day this week. Every day this week, I tried the meditation. We were discussing, what is a tool for measuring results? Because I love to see results. And I would say one of the most practical and easy to do tools to help you really get started on the meditation track if you feel like you've been struggling for a long time. You've attempted it multiple times, perhaps over the years, and it's just not clicking. What can you do? This tool, as simplistic as it sounds, is one of the most effective that I've heard. And I've done it myself, and I recommend it to my clients who I work with and friends and family who want to meditate too. And it's keeping what I'll call a very honest and practical meditation log. So it's a journal, and you can get just a simple piece of paper. You can find a nice little notebook, or even if you're going to use your device, you can do it on your phone and just keep it in a notes section on your phone. And it's really simple. You write down the date, how many times you meditated that day, and for what length of time. So what time you meditated at. And if you only meditated once, that's fantastic. If it's twice, jot down 2 times. I say the sweet spot when people can graduate to the level of meditating twice a day for 20 minutes each. So it's in the morning for 20 minutes and at the late afternoon, early evening before dinner for 20 minutes. That's the real sweet spot of effective, powerful impact of meditation. As I was saying before, you can start off with just 5 minutes of mindfulness, graduate to 10 minutes of mindfulness. But keeping the log, what I find is when I ask people, my clients, to do this, they say, well, that's simple. And I guess I'll prove to her that this just isn't working because I'm meditating every day and it's not working. What they often realize is that they'll meditate on Sunday, on Monday, and then something happens. They get too busy Tuesday, they forget to do it Wednesday, Thursday flies by, they meditate on Friday, and they come back to me and they said, oh, I guess it wasn't every day. It was, I skipped a whole bunch of days in the middle. So it keeps us honest with ourselves and the discipline of the practice. And just that simple, element of self-tracking can actually go a really long way. And once you see that, you can actually start to add in, well, what did you do that day? Did you listen to that very soft ambient music to help you get mindfulness? Did you do your 21-day, guided meditation challenge? Because that's incredible. Keep your own personal log in that journaling. And a lot of people do this for nutrition and diet, right? A lot of people do this for exercise. They keep a log if they have a goal. They want to lose 15 pounds or they want to be able to run their marathon. They often keep one of these trackers. So I recommend doing that for meditation as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope almost everyone who is listening in would definitely benefit from that. One of the things that comes to my mind is while you're talking about Deepak Chopra and 21-day meditation program, I actually worked with someone called Punacha Machaya who built this app for Deepak called Jayo.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm not familiar with it, but great.
Yeah, so it has also a similar, tool that Deepak has developed where you can go through this. And thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people should check it out. We will probably try and add a link to the video as well, whoever is watching and listening in. Now, okay, let me collect your shared so many things. Of course, we talked about the 4 pillars of wellness. We have talked about how do we get there. We've also talked about some tools that can help you concentrate on meditation. And of course, some easy ways to quickly get into that flow state and then stay there consistently by doing it, practicing journaling and sort of keeping track, self-tracking exercises that can help you get there. But at this point, I think the next question that comes to my mind is, I was reading an article which you wrote, and it said that investment in yourself through meditation yields the highest result. But I keep getting this question all the time, but what can meditation really do for me, right? And keeping that in mind, people always, try and find these successful examples and then they start believing in it. So keeping this question in mind, that what can meditation do for me? Do you have some successful examples that you can share so that it can inspire our audience?
Absolutely. I love that question about successful examples of what are the benefits of meditation. And I will start with myself. I am a walking, breathing, talking version of an example of what meditation and mindfulness can do. I spoke a bit earlier about the complete personal awakening that I had to a life that I had not realized was lacking purpose, was lacking fulfillment in the sense that I was contributing to society in a positive way. I had an extraordinarily successful career. I was very fortunate in the fashion industry and in the marketing and advertising industry in New York City. Fast-paced, high pressure. I handled it all phenomenally. I did not realize the toll that it was taking on me. I did not have a meditation practice. I was not self-aware enough to realize that I was being burnt out, that I needed my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health were very much suffering. I wasn't even aware of the balance of those four things. And so when I began my meditation practice, it actually was the initial stepping stones for transforming my entire life. And I did this 9 to 10 years ago is when I started my meditation practice. And I've since become an entrepreneur. I left the corporate world, and it's not to speak negatively of the entire corporate world or the fashion industry. I just realized that that was not a fit for me. Some other people, they're thriving. That's fantastic. They have other things that make their life whole and complete. Each person is unique. For me, I found purpose. I found some passion in life, and I found things that I was so happy to work so hard to accomplish and do because they were helping others or being of service. It was fun and exciting business versus something that I wasn't passionate about. Without a meditation practice, I would not have had the self-awareness and space that meditation creates to reflect on everything that's going on in my life, to be able to identify things that were not good for me. They're really, really harming me more than they were helping me. So in my own personal journey, this is why I do the work that I do. Meditation is one component. I will say it is one of the biggest components of self-transformation. I like to say we were all beings of higher consciousness. Some of us are just struggling to reach our full potential of consciousness, awareness, being generous, and feeling this connection of oneness and wholeness. This is the yogic philosophy that we are all interconnected. Without a meditation practice, I think it is way more difficult to touch that and to realize that that's real. That's something you touch in meditation. When you transcend, you're actually able to feel the infinite quantum field of existence of all things together. And this is something that not just myself, I will mention other people who have done it quite successfully. If you look at, again, these names, of course, Deepak Chopra, because this is his industry of expertise. So not surprising. This is going to be, what he talks about. Someone like Oprah Winfrey, and these are things that you can look up, and it's exciting to watch them and hear them speak. She speaks passionately about how meditation can be credited to some of her greatest successes, some of her greatest creative epiphanies. She is a female entrepreneur of some of the greatest success that we've seen here in the United States. And she really champions wellness and health and positivity. Meditation's critical for her. If you look at the late Steve Jobs, he actually left, Yogananda wrote the book that I'm escaping the title of right now, but Steve Jobs championed meditation. It was such a powerful experience for himself that he actually had the book written by Yogananda. I think it's the autobiography of a yogi. The name has escaped me right now. He had that book left on the chair of all of the people who attended his funeral. And this is a true story that you can look up, because that was his last gift to people, was the autobiography of a yogi, and the power that meditation has, and the creativity that he saw the future. Everything that he did with Apple, and Apple's not the only company that he started. His career is long. And when he dropped out of college and he went to India, and as he might say, or someone else reported in the biography, he walked around barefoot in India for a year or two, finding himself and feeling the quantum space, the unified field of consciousness. This was through meditation. And finally, in a very, I don't know who's inspired by all these variety of people that I just mentioned, but Ray Dalio is one of the largest successful businessmen in the United States. He is a hedge fund manager. I believe it's the largest hedge fund in the world. So quite successful individual in finance. He is a tremendous champion of transcendental meditation. And it is rumored that all of his employees are at least offered the transcendental meditation course, and this is a finance guy, right? This is not yoga, wellness, hippie. This is what you might call a hardcore finance guy, who transcendental meditation is an integral part of the largest hedge fund in the world. And this stuff is reported upon, so you can find some articles about that. But these are some examples to just stay the course and to just, whether you aspire to be Oprah or Ray Dalio, these are very different people. Meditation has played an integral part in all of their successes that they've seen.
Wow, that's fascinating. I actually did not know the Steve Jobs story, and it definitely is going to be a question in my next quiz. Autobiography of a Yogi. I see the book on my shelf right now. I just was having a moment. Am I thinking of the right book? That is the one. And it's inspiring. Yes. The moment. It just came to you at the right moment.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really impactful book. And this is definitely going to be a question in my next quiz for sure. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Now let me move the conversation to another piece of the puzzle. And that is, of course, mental health and mental, wellness, as you have put it. Now, uh, before I go into sort of dive deeper, I think the first question that I'll ask is, sort of fear is currently top of the mind. It's sort of prevailing all around us. In that time, like, how do you stay calm? How do you be peaceful? Do you have any suggestions?
So in regards to these, what I'll call the current times of the year 2020, I believe it's safe to say for most people alive right now, they have never quite seen a year like 2020. Even those who were alive for the Vietnam era and the World War II era, and I mean this with the utmost respect, there is nothing quite at a global scale that has been seen that's come to fruition in this year. And one of the biggest challenges is that we still don't know where things are going. What does the new normal look like? We've heard this for 6 months now. The new normal, the new normal. Guys, I think we're a long way away from figuring out what a consistent way of being and living is going to be in each country, each state, each town, each city, each community for quite some time. So how to deal with the stress of uncertainty. And this is one of the most beautiful yogic philosophies or practices or lessons that I learned many, many years ago, is that to be in the state of a yogi means to be comfortable with the unknown and comfortable with uncertainty, and that the ground is always moving beneath us, right? And it's not, oh, let me find balance. When I get balanced, everything's going to be smooth sailing. No, life happens, whether it's coronavirus, it's everything that went down in 2020 per country. It is dramatic. There is no waiting for things to calm down. There is showing up and managing the environment and the situation that you're in. So my first tip is be really self-aware of things that you cannot control, things that you can have influence on, and things that are within your control. I, as a single individual, as wonderful and powerful as I am, I cannot control the spread of COVID in the United States. Me singularly, I can do my part, but the overall thing that's going on and our political elections that's coming up, the stress is coming from all angles. There's a lot that I cannot control in my life that surrounds my environment today. I need to recognize that and let go of the desire and wish for it to be different. That's where we get we self-create our own stress because we're desperately wishing for things to be different and to be how we want them to be and for problems to go away. Why can't it be easier? Why does this have to happen to me? We are constantly victims of our own circumstance. The things that we can influence is my own personal family, my colleagues who I work with. I can try to be a positive force. I can have constructive conversations with them. I can bring good energy to meetings. I can buckle down and do the hard work. These are things that are within my influence of the people and community surrounding me. And then things that are in my control is how I show up with my daily mindfulness, health, and wellness practices. I can control whether or not I meditate during the day. I can control whether or not I actually meditate twice during the day. If I get too busy or something comes up and there's all the excuses, I can control eating lousy pizza or a salad. Like, these are things that I can control. And I know, there's people of all different economic means, right? Not everybody has access, unfortunately, deeply unfortunately, to even healthy food and clean drinking water. I want to be really respectful of that. But I think to this audience, in the context of this conversation, there are things each person can control. And one thing that isn't with your control is your attitude, is how you show up. And it's the energy that you bring to conversations. Be the light, be the positivity. Even if you're stressed, be emotionally healthy and mentally healthy. Work through your emotions. Be self-aware. Apologize when you need to apologize. Apologies, asking for forgiveness for something that was said in a terrible way yesterday. That's within our control. So segmenting those three things, what's not in our control, what we can influence, and what is in our control, this is how you can help deal with your stress. And make lists. I'm big on lists. Write it down. If you're feeling so overwhelmed, what's the top thing that's overwhelming you? Put it in one of those three categories. Draw 2 lines in a piece of paper. You have 3 columns. Map it out. Spend some time with that. And what I often find with people is that they realize when they start mapping down all the things that are triggering the most problematic stress and anxiety, it's not as much as they think. They think that there's 50 things that are wrong and broken in their life. It turns out there's really only 6 that are really challenging, and they need to look at that. But when I call it the hamster wheel of the mind, when those 6 things are going in cycle, it feels like 50. So this is I'm describing right now. I mean, everything I've just described is the mindfulness practice, is self-awareness, it's reflection, it's using your tools, and it's having the discipline to like not let what's called the lower version of ourselves get the best of us, lean to be the higher version of ourselves.
Well, everyone who is listening in and joining in, there you have it, another framework for you to reach your higher self. Chiyoko, at this point, let me ask you another question. But before that, you have been on the Mount Sinai Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Advisory Board. And my question to you would be that what is the biggest impediment you find for these people or teenagers to talk about their mental issues with their parents or anybody else? Because I think one of the biggest problem is we don't talk about it, neither as a society nor sometimes as an individual. And that's where the core issue lie. How do we solve that?
It's a very important question. Mental health for youth, for young people, mental health for everybody, for sure, but to focus on mental health for youth. What are some of the biggest challenges that I see? There's many of them. I'm trying to actually order them in priority order in my mind. There are so many challenges that this might not come out in priority order, but I just want to share. These are challenges that I feel can be overcome if we all collaborate and we work together and we have mindful conversations. I guess the first thing is like we need to have discussions about mental health, mental wellness. I like those phrases. It's complex when people use mental illness. And I know that's clinically the phrase that's used with psychiatrists, psychologists in the medical field. It is classified technically as mental illness. I encourage just changes in our vocabulary can be helpful. Mental health is more from a holistic standpoint. If there is mental illness that is diagnosed, and there's a whole long list of things, here in the United States, be articulate, about that and work with a proper professional as the best as possible. But in general, mental health and mental wellness, the conversations around what is causing some of the greatest stress and anxiety for young people is complicated. And I think what adults can do is hold a safe space, what I call a safe container for the conversations that we have, knowing that they're going to be imperfect and that today's youth, teenagers, right? These are young children, maybe below 10 years old, teens, young 20s. That's very, very broad category. Their life is and I'm 40 years old. The life of a 20-year-old and the life of the 10-year-old, because of the advancement of technology and social and digital media, compared to when I was 20 and I was 10, they are living in a radically different world. So I would say adults, patience and recognizing that you don't have the experience that these young people do with what technology and social media is. You don't understand those pressures. And we can talk about it. All the adults can pontificate about it and have all these theories and point fingers at tech giants and Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, we can know this stuff, but you don't know what it's like to actually be a young person with this in your life. And there's a movie that just came out, which I will highly recommend everybody watch because it is directly related to mental health of everybody, including young people. It's called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. It came out last week. I actually am very much connected. I'm seeing lots of smiles here. I am very much connected to some of the individuals that were behind the production of that. I actually personally know some of the people who were featured in that film. They did an incredible job. They worked tirelessly for 2 years. If you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, this is what I recommend. And this is all tied to mental wellness, right? So I think holding the container, and also if there's chronic stress and things that would be classified classically in the medical field as mental illness. This can be OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. This can be ADD, ADHD, all these 3-letter, 4-letter acronyms. There is depression, there's anxiety. These are the most basic, right? There's many, many. I respectfully acknowledge that there are some really difficult positions people are in. Being able to set yourself up for the best medical treatment comes down to your overall health and well-being and lifestyle. There is a statistic which is dated at this point, and I wanted to Google it before we spoke, and I didn't look it up, so maybe you guys can help me. I know when I was in my nutrition school that I went to, there was a statistic that roughly 80% of chronic pain and illness in the United States is preventable or reversible through diet and exercise alone. That is 80%. And I'll use an example of mental illness in children. ADD, ADHD is often one of the most talked about. And there's so much research and articles about this, and it's a hot topic. There's opinions all over the place where America is over-medicating their children. Everyone just gets Adderall, they get whatever, I don't even know the names of all the prescriptions, they just drug them. I think in some circumstances, prescription medication can be very helpful. What I would highly recommend first is you look at diet and you look at exercise. High amounts of sugar, high amounts of processed foods are proven to enhance the negative results of someone who is classically ADD or ADHD. Poor diet, high sugars, processed foods, and lack of exercise, sitting there on the phone or on video games and not running around the way kids used to. And I'll reference myself, as I know some of us here on the call can remember back in those days, we didn't have our own devices. There is less exercise going on for children, and the diet is becoming poorer and poorer. And I'm speaking very much about the United States, because I'm most familiar with those statistics, right? And I think a lot of this is applied universally and globally. Parents helping their kids have a healthy, holistic lifestyle at home first will decrease the stress and anxiety, a lot of which is triggering some of what's classified as mental illness. And that the stuff that actually, is not improving as desired through diet, exercise, healthy lifestyle, absolutely, there is no shame. And so going back to me sitting on the board of Mount Sinai Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, our mission is to democratize access to mental health care and destigmatize mental illness. Those are the two pillars of why I am one of 10 advisors on this board. I'm not a doctor, right? But we support the team at Mount Sinai, and it's a childhood and adolescent psychiatry department, because there's a lot of support that's needed in this area. So even if you're just able to normalize this and reduce the stigma of having conversation about mental wellness, that is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things you said, relates to me, and a few of the things that even at GameSpace, what we try to do is we try to bring quizzes and games for good, because there's so much pressure on teenagers these days because of various games, which has caused a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety issues among them. I think why not use these tools? And you mentioned the Netflix documentary, which I've been recommending to everyone as well, is that, look, I mean, these are tools that we developed and we can use them for good. I think that culture of good, if we can bring back, and in fact, one of my vision in life is to sort of able to create a gamified system which takes us, if health is a game for us, and the kids get engaged to maintain a good health just because it's incentivized through game and it's fun to do, right? That would be a lot more exciting. And you mentioned about food as a medicine, and one of our speakers, we had Naveen Jain, who is an entrepreneur based in US. He started a company called Viome. So Naveen's vision in life is that he claims that, okay, in future, I will make illness a choice, right? What his company is trying to do is they use AI to personalize food recommendations for you so that food becomes the medicine itself, right? So I think all of those, I think comes together, and then together probably we'll be able to make it happen. And that sounds really, really awesome. Now, with this, we are almost towards the end, but let me ask, before I move to Katayani, let me ask one more question. If we are to achieve SDG 3 by 2030 and provide inclusive wellness to everyone, what do we do? What would you say is the blueprint that can probably help us get there in the next 10 years?
Inclusive wellness for all is a beautiful, incredible, powerful, really important mission, goal, and North Star, right? Inclusive wellness to all beings. we are a complicated planet at this moment. We have just over 7.5 billion, roughly, people on this planet. We have people of all different economic environments and abilities. So depending on, as unfortunate as it is, I'm going to lean into this, that a lot depends on your economic circumstance. So just to kind of narrow down to what my longer answer will refer to is that I fully am respectful that there's some people who I've said before don't have clean drinking water and they don't have enough food on the table. And there's a statistic where 1 in 5 Americans at this point, as of September 2020, was struggling to put food on the table. 1 in 5 Americans in this first world country. And so there's a lot of challenges, right? Economic challenges set aside, if you have access to food and buying groceries at a grocery store that include fresh fruits and vegetables and clean water, that's kind of the baseline. Like, if you have access to that's the foundation that's necessary. If you have access to what I'll call seasonal, plant-based, local foods, that's really a big part of the foundation of what I think health and wellness can start with for all. And it's education. I think without going on too much of a tangent, but I think with a lot of the corporate companies that manufacture food, so this is processed foods, with their marketing and their advertising, what they have bled into the mindset of the consumer of what's healthy versus not healthy. I have found the average extremely intellectual, successful New York adult cannot tell me what a whole grain is. They say it's whole wheat bread. That's what a whole grain is. That's a processed food because it's bread. And I use that just one singular example to say there's a baseline education on what whole foods are that I think would be tremendously helpful no matter what country or what city or what state or community that you're in. And I want to reference something specifically called the blue zones. And I think you asked me, what's a blueprint? Like what's a plan, right? So rather than me cook up my own scheme, I will reference something that I think is brilliant and excellent. And it's over 10 years old, but the blue zones originated from National Geographic, the magazine and television station. They hired scientists to study what are the 6 locations in the world where there are the most people who live to be over 100 years old in a healthy, vibrant community state, not in a nursing home. So they identified 6 areas in the world. I won't get too much into detail, but essentially they identified that it is a local, sustainable, non-processed, whole foods, mostly plant-based with very minimal animal products in the diet that universally is the healthiest. And those 6 things that I just listed right there, it sounds really easy. Going back to what I love to suggest, do a log, do a food intake log of what are you eating. I know even, again, educated professionals that they believe they know better, they'll realize half of their food is processed food. It's not whole foods. That right there, that education is lacking. And it's because of corporations, for their bottom line, selling products that are inferior nutritional value to people so that they can make money, right? You can tell I'm opinionated about this. So if you study the blue zones, I'd love for there to be a link to this. I'm not affiliated with them at all, except I've been a huge fan and champion since the book. There's one book that came out probably in 2009 or 2010. They now have, I believe it's worldwide, it's at least United States-wide programs where communities can sign up and download a blueprint for what the community can be doing. And they do all kinds of things like how to host community potluck vegetarian Monday nights, 1 day a week, go vegetarian. That could change the world. That could change the world. And that's just one example. They have all kinds of things. And they're pretty mindful that there's the beginner level, intermediate level, and a little bit more advanced level, right? Don't go vegan overnight. That's another thing. Learned that the hard way. Don't go vegan overnight. I'm not vegan or vegetarian right now. I actually follow I don't think there's actually a Blue Zones like actual diet. You can't download the 60 foods to eat, but the concepts of those 6 things that I mentioned before, whole foods, not processed, mostly plant-based, out of no chemicals, pesticides, GMO free, as much organic as possible, being reasonable, and minimal animal products, animal meats, fish, dairy, minimal, whatever people consider to be minimal, that's up to you. I think that in general is probably one of the easiest, like across the board recommendations that I could do. And of course, exercise. 3 times a week, get your heart rate up and sweat. You just need to exercise. We all just do.
Wow, that's so wonderful, and there's so many insights that you packed into one answer. Like every answer, I have to probably go back and dissect and find the insights that you shared, and then eventually turn them into small nuggets and share it with everyone. At this point, I have a young voice with me today. Katyayani is a young student. She is part of the global volunteer community of Alexis. So she has a couple of questions for you. Katyayani, please introduce yourself and ask your questions.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Katyayani, and I am a student currently pursuing political science honors. So I'm pursuing bachelor's in political science, and I wish to specialize in conflict management. And I firmly believe that a world is needy of peace, and we cannot have peace without mindful people and people who are fulfilled in themselves. So my first question for you is that you advocate drugless medicine, and you are a part of few panels also which advocate the same, but the deep nexus between pharma industries and the political elites is also reality. The $100 billion aid that the US government announced for this during this pandemic for hospitals were ideally concentrated only on the 39 big chains of hospitals, as per the reporting by New York Times. And as we have a lot of data on how top 10 pharma companies of the world, their profits rose by almost 200% during the pandemic. So, how do you plan to bring about this consensus between this $1 trillion industry and the political leaders and other stakeholders to materialize this goal?
Thank you so much. I love that you asked what's my personal plan to help rectify this situation. Not a big problem at all. I think that was super well articulated. Thank you. And the complications, the layers of complexity when it comes to the healthcare industry and big pharma and corporations and government and policy. I am not the most educated expert to speak to all of those complexities in a very, very knowledgeable way. So I want to, first and foremost say that I'm very baseline in a place of understanding, especially because, as you mentioned, I am so passionate about first trying a drugless, meaning a pharmaceutical prescription, drugless approach to health and well-being before going into pharmaceuticals and prescriptions. I believe pharmaceuticals and prescriptions are very helpful in some cases. I also firmly believe that the majority, over 50%, this is my opinion, research away, I believe over 50% of those who are being prescribed prescriptions could actually not need them, get themselves into a greater state and well-being where they don't need those drugs through food and diet and exercise, as I've been speaking to a lot here. And I don't have the solution of how to untangle this complexity. I think so much of it is rooted in capitalism. It's rooted in what's now, entrepreneurship. Everybody is their own business owner. Everyone's super, super savvy these days. There's a lot of there's a very complex tangled knot of all of these industries together. I don't think it's like, oh, you find one little thread and you pull it out and the whole knot will just loosen, it'll all be okay. What I would highly suggest is that the consumer do everything they possibly can with their dollars, with their money, and where you choose to spend your money is where the corporations will follow. So the consumer, Mr. and Miss Consumer, kids consumer, myself included, where you spend your money and on what products, that's where the investment will be made to make more products and more things like that. If you're investing in healthier, more organic food, things like fitness and wellness and mindfulness, if our dollars are going in that direction, the investors will follow because there's opportunity to make money, right? And as much as I might not love how it's like, oh, it's all about the money, I actually just think that's a practical observation on my end. The world as I see it today, there is no undoing the corporate greed in a day's time or even in a year's time. So let's play the system. Investors and investment follows the money that consumers are spending. If we take care of ourselves better, there will not be as much of a demand for pharmaceuticals, right? And it's interesting. I kind of thought I had so much more to say, but I just realized that is in a very idealistic way, because I'm not the expert. I'm sure you might have more folks that are more in the weeds on actual policy, on politicians, on, who know the ins and outs of some of these biggest pharma companies. I just know that this is one of the biggest inspiration points of why I entered the health and wellness industry in 2010, 2011, is because it blew my mind, corporate greed and manipulation over the consumer. So it is the consumer's responsibility, as seen in that movie, The Social Dilemma. Research, educate yourself. Do not be a victim. Do not sit there and be a victim and say, I don't know how to eat healthy. If you have internet access, you know how to eat healthy. Figure it out. And this is where I get very tough love on some people. I'm a very loving, kind person. You guys know this, right? I just want to hug everybody. That's my general vibe. But I get very tough love on people because if you're sitting there eating I won't name brands, but eating your bags of chips and drinking your cola and and complaining that you have chronic back pain and diabetes, and that you can't afford the prescriptions to lower your blood pressure and help your cholesterol, that is a consumer education problem. And guys, we need to wise up as consumers, because as seen in The Social Dilemma, we are being manipulated. We are being taken advantage of. They want to change our behavior so that they can get more of our money. It's really that simple. I don't consider this a conspiracy theory. So I think it actually, so much empowerment lies in the consumer, who for many people right now, they're just asleep, unaware, not paying attention, being a victim, and placing blame elsewhere. The minute we can get together as communities, support each other, get off our devices less, have, plant-based potluck dinners, exchange, be COVID careful. Don't be having dinners together without 6 feet in your mask. You know this. That's actually going to be my message versus coming down on the Republicans, the Democrats, naming corporations. Lots of people can do that all day long. I'm going to actually say, Mr. and Mrs. Consumer, Mr. and Ms. Consumer, you have a lot of power, more than you possibly realize. And if we all work together, we can actually make real change happen.
Absolutely, ma'am. So we'll keep this advice in mind. And as your concluding remarks, could you please help us chart out through 3 major points on how can we as youth integrate our hectic lifestyle with all the career aspirations and the flow state set of mindset that you argued for?
I'm so excited to talk about peak performance and flow state with the youth, because I firmly believe the youth is fully responsible for the world that they're inheriting, and they need to be as healthy and well as possible to take the reins, right? I'm 40 years old, so youth is a bit younger than me. I will say I'm technically a millennial, though. I was born in the year 1980, so I'm technically a millennial, 40 years old, though. And I'll say youth, if this is people very, very young 20s, in their teens and pre-teenage years, I think this even applies to some people that are just children under the age of 10. I would say first identify if you're seeking the path to understand how do you get into peak performance and flow state, first do an assessment, be honest with yourself. Is this something that you're going to have to support yourself on and find your own motivation, keep yourself on track, read your books, listen to your audio podcasts? Or is this something where you can get a friend or family member or multiple friends and family members to help support you? If you have the support and buy-in of your family and your immediate household, this will probably be 5 times easier. If you have the support and buy-in and people in your peer group, your friends, your buddies, your Snapchat folks, as if I use Snapchat, I never have, but I know what you guys are all doing, TikToking and Snapchatting. Those that you engage with on these apps and your devices with, like that, those are your friends. If you can do something with your friends together, it'll probably be 10 times easier than trying to do it on your own when nobody else is aware of what you're doing. They think you're acting a little strange, like this mindfulness meditation. So community support and family support is number 1. Get people to support you. Number 2 is have an honest assessment of where you are right now. Maybe you're somebody who actually is needing to lose 10 or 15 pounds, right? Like your diet is not good. There's no exercise. Have a real assessment. Childhood obesity in the United States, the statistics are positively jaw-dropping. Over 50% of children are overweight and or obese in the United States. We are a very wealthy, educated country. These stats, I actually just give myself goosebumps. These stats are so horrifying. If you're somebody who's looking for improvement, peak performance and flow state, it starts with a healthy physical body, right? So have an honest assessment with yourself. If you need to lose weight and you know that would be healthy, fantastic. If you're at a healthy weight, that's Great, stay there. And then know what else is challenging you. Stress and anxiety. Make a list of all the things that you know are really good and you're happy and pleased with where they are in terms of your health and wellness. Make a list of the things that you really want to work on. Identify what these two things are. Give yourself a lot of credit. I feel like that's a big thing with adults and youth, is that we don't give ourselves enough credit. We're very, very hard on ourselves. We're so judgmental of our own selves. We think we should be, you know, thinner, richer, wiser, whatever. The list goes on. And it's very harmful when we're not respectful of ourselves. We don't love ourselves. This is self-care. This is self-love. These things are very important. So give yourself a lot of credit for some good stuff going on in your life and make a list of the things you want to work on. 3 things. And then I would say mindfulness, as I've spoken to a lot during these talks, but mindfulness, graduating into meditation, that is one of the absolute foundation points for everything regarding flow state and peak performance. So we've spoken about how to get started with your mindfulness and meditation. I would say that's right up there. The same with like your physical wellness. So being at a healthy diet, healthy exercise, and mindfulness. That is the start to your peak state and flow, your peak performance and flow state. More advanced levels will come, but that's really how you get started.
That's great. Thank you, Chiyoko, for the beautiful answers and 3 action points that you've shared with the youth. Katayani, thank you so much for the questions. And to sum up for everyone, I learned a lot today. And first of all, 4 pillars of health, equally important for us to achieve SDG 3. We have to focus on physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, all 4, and only then we will be able to achieve what we are looking for. For all of you who is listening in, follow mindful morning rituals to unleash your full potential, and maintain a journal. Be self-aware, be a positive force in this world, and remember that attitude of how you show up is probably the most important thing. So always show up with the positive attitude. Chiyoko, since asking questions in some way is my business, I'm never running out of them. So I have one last question for you. If you have to sum up your vision for a better world in 1 sentence, what would that be?
My 1 sentence answer of my mission in this world is to raise consciousness, and to do that 1 step at a time. And raising consciousness begins with self-awareness, self-reflection, generosity, compassion, and kindness to others. And if I can spread that to other people and inspire folks to put more of that into their life, everything will change. It's a game changer for the future of this world, is raising consciousness.
Well, on that note, here is to that change coming soon and sooner for all of you. And thank you so much, Chiyoko, for giving us time and joining in. Everyone who is listening in, for a world where no one is left behind, it has never been clearer that all of us have a role to play in order to bring about change. Whoever you are, no matter where you come from, every one of us can make a difference. Every action truly counts. Get involved, attend the SDG Action Conclave 2020, participate in the SDG quiz, help raise awareness about the goals, and connect with a global community of passionate volunteers. This Global Goals Week, let us all come together to spread the knowledge about people, planet, and our sustainable development goals. Thank you all for joining us. Follow us on Instagram at Youth Forum India for all the updates. And don't forget to join our next session. Thank you, Chiyoko, once again for joining us. And from everybody at Alexis Society and Youth Forum, have a good day ahead.